Okay, as we have all learned a million times, the scientific process is the same thing as the scientific method, the same thing as scientific inquiry. Anything like that, we're all talking about the same thing. How we do science is the same no matter what you call it, okay? So, the objectives for today when we're learning it, okay, we're just going to relearn the steps of it, kind of why it's important. It's important to know it just because when you're learning science, you need to understand all of the work and all of the effort and time to figure this information out. Okay, this information is not easy stuff, and without it, it has shaped our world into what we know now and how we can work and how we can use our bodies and how we relate with other animals. And it's all because of the scientific process. Okay, so it's important to know and it's important to understand, because if you ever do want to figure something out, you need to know the steps to follow, okay? And it moves in a cycle, but there's always a list of steps you need to do so you can understand what's happening, okay? Here's the key terms. I would make sure you know these words, as they will be used consistently throughout the year, and I do expect you to know what I'm saying, okay? I don't want to have to re-explain every time a new vocab word pops up, okay? So we're going to need to understand these things, okay? So the limits of science. Science is not everything, be all this. It's just our way of understanding the world around us, okay? And only the measurable world, okay? We can't measure a lot of things, but what we can measure, that is science, okay? If we cannot see it or measure it, it is not science. And that is all we focus on, is what is science, okay? It cannot tell us what to do with the information. It just presents the information to us. It doesn't tell us how we actually need to interpret it or anything like that, okay? It cannot tell us what is morally correct and what is not, okay? So deciding to run a red light, that's not science, okay? That is just human beings being humans, okay? Science cannot tell you those things. The only thing that it can do, and I want to emphasize this as much as possible, is it can only tell us this, okay? It can only tell us what we see and what we can measure, and it explains it. It doesn't tell us anything else. It just lists the facts, nothing else, okay? The objects of scientific study must be observable and quantifiable. What it means by quantifiable is that you can count it or you can see it, or again, it just be measured is the only thing, okay? Science does not speak God or supernatural or anything like that. Miracles are not science, okay? All of that, we're not telling you how to interpret any information. Again, we're just giving you that information, okay? It doesn't tell us how beautiful something is. That is not science, okay? You cannot quantify that. Yeah, it seems like it could be observable, but that is an opinion, and opinions are not science, and I cannot stress that enough to anybody on Facebook or anything like that, that science is only the facts. It is not how the facts are interpreted, okay? And to get these facts, okay, we go through the process. You first make an observation, okay? If you don't have that observation, why did you ever question it, okay? So observation, question, problem, any of that is going to be your first step. All right, then your next step is to make a hypothesis. So what's your guess, okay? What do you think is going to happen because something else happened, okay? From there, we're going to make a test, okay? And we're going to decide what to do with our prediction, okay? From there, we'll gather our results. Then we need to analyze those results. And then here we need to accept, reject, or modify. Okay, that is new for a lot of kids, students, to realize that science is not the end-all, be-all. We can accept our hypothesis because the results showed us, okay? We can reject it because the results didn't show us, or we can modify it by changing our hypothesis just a little. Maybe after the next round of the process, we'll be able to accept it. Okay, the only thing that ever happens is science is the process or the hypothesis is accepted. It is never a proven fact. It is just accepted, okay? And we do call those facts typically, but it's never actually fully proved, all right? But here is again another list just to show you in a list order of the process, okay? So that first step is to make an observation, okay? That's the act of perceiving objects or events, phenomenon using the senses. I spelled that wrong. Okay, but using the senses. Anything you see, smell, taste, hear, feel, any of that, that's an observation, okay? It's a description, measurement, or a record of any object or phenomenon. So what that means is anything that happened, okay? And then that observation will then lead to a question. You saw something, so you wondered about it, okay? That is just an animal nature, is to wonder why something happened, and we try to figure it out, okay? And from there, you have to make a guess, okay? Which is a hypothesis, all right? And we all know what they are, and we know that they're written in the if-then statements, okay? But it must be precise to make the prediction, okay? You cannot just randomly guess something, okay? You have to say, if I change this, then this will happen. And it all needs to be science. Remember, if I color my hair, then my hair will be prettier. That is not a hypothesis because prettier is not science, okay? That, again, is just an opinion. A hypothesis must be potentially falsifiable. What that means is that it should have the chance to be wrong, okay? So that's saying, like, if I eat the chips, then I will be full. There's a chance I won't be full, so that is falsifiable. Okay, so just keep it simple. You have to actually be able to test your hypothesis. It can't just be some random fact or anything along those lines. Okay, it has to be something that can be proven wrong. Okay, make predictions. Again, predictions are just like our hypothesis. The hypothesis is making that prediction, and it can be true or it can be false. We have to be able to do a test to figure it out. Okay, the next step is to conduct the experiment. Sorry, I don't know why that's on there. That's the fun part of any science, is conducting the actual experiment. All right, that's when we test everything. We test our hypothesis to a procedure, and we make sure we follow the procedure right, because we don't want to sway our experiment one way or the other, or else it becomes not science. All right, and the whole point is to get just the information and the correct information without any biases. Okay, your control group. This is the one we all struggle with a lot. All right, this is the one with no special treatment. This one is normal. So if we're comparing plant height based off of how much water you give it, the control group is going to be the one without any water. Okay, no special treatment. It got absolutely nothing to it. Okay, it's the normal one. Normal, normal, normal. Remember that. Okay, your control group is normal. All right, put it in your brain. All right, so here's the parts of the experiment. This is where things start to get a little confusing, but without this, if we didn't have every part of this experiment, then our experiment would be swayed in one way or the other. Okay, so you have to have your control group, so that way we can have things to compare it to. Again, your control group is our comparison. It's normal, so we compare everything to the normal. And that's how we know if things are wrong or not. Your experimental group, these are the ones that do receive special treatment. There is multiple experimental groups. Okay, your control group, there's only one. Okay, that's the normal. Experimental is all the ones that we're changing everything to. Okay, your control groups and experimental groups are set up to be identical except for one factor or variable. So that's the one thing that we're changing. Like I said earlier about the water one, okay? we are only changing the water. You're changing nothing else. You're not changing the sun or anything, or else that starts to affect the rest of the experiment. You can only change one thing. Okay, more parts of our experiment is the independent variable. Okay, remember, this is the one that I change. They both start with I, so that's how you can remember it. Okay, I change it. I'm in control of it. Okay, that's another one, is in control. So it's the one that we can decide what to do with. We can change the amount of water. We can decide what time we're going to take the test. Okay, that is all independent. The stuff that you are in control, that you're able to be in control of. Your dependent, though, is based off of your independent. This is the one that we are measuring. Okay, so the independent's the one we're testing, and the dependent is the one that we are measuring. Okay, and the measurement is the one that gives us the results to be able to know the difference if the independent matters or if it doesn't matter. Okay, this one, if we're testing the amount of water for plant growth, okay, we're in control of the water, so the only other one left in there is plant growth. We measured the height of the plants, so that makes plant growth the dependent variable. Okay, and your controlled variables, these are the factors that always remain the same. Okay, these are going to be, they're also known as constants. Okay, these ones are ones that don't change throughout the whole thing. So if we're changing the water, that means that the sun needs to stay the same, the soil needs to stay the same, the time we water needs to stay the same. Okay, everything that you can't change in the experiment is a controlled variable. All right, if you were to change these, then it would affect your experiment. So that's why those ones need to stay the same. No matter how many times you change the independent, this all stays the same. Okay, so how to write your hypothesis or be able to pick out your independent or your dependent is, we all know hypotheses are if-then. Okay, so your independent always follows your if, and your dependent always follows your then. Okay, if you ever were to see that, then that is how you know. All right, if you can't remember that you're in control of something, put it in as a hypothesis and see if that makes sense. Remember, your hypotheses are basically cause and effect. Okay, if I cause this to happen, then this will be affected. How? Okay, so those are ways to remember those. I know they get tricky in your head, but there's a bunch of ways to help you keep those straight. All right, think out loud. That is always my best advice, is to think out loud. Okay, so to analyze and make conclusions, you have to take the test. You have to get all of the information and data taken. You can graph your data to help you analyze it better. To make a conclusion, again, this is where I was talking about the accept, reject, or modify the hypothesis. That is your conclusion. If your test showed that your hypothesis was correct, you accept it. If it showed that it was wrong, you reject it. And then if it just needed a little tweaking, you would say my hypothesis needs to be modified. Okay? Basically, though, we stick with accept or reject. All right? Because if it's rejected, then we want to go fix our hypothesis and redo a test. Okay? The conclusion can be supported, but never proven. Never proven. This is what I was saying. We call things facts, but they are never proven facts. Okay? We have information that support everything, but they cannot actually be proved. Okay, that's a weird thing about science, is we always think that it proves everything, but really it doesn't. We just have information that supports it. We can have a lot of information that supports it, but we can never actually say something's proven. Okay, after many tests in support for a hypothesis, it becomes a scientific theory. Okay, so this is whenever we have accepted our hypothesis multiple times, and all the tests show that our hypothesis can be accepted. After lots of review through the scientific community and everything, it becomes a theory. All right, and again, we don't ever prove it, but the scientific theory definitely will support it. Okay, so the difference between the fact and the theory is the scientific fact is repeatable observation of the natural world, but facts may change as observations become more accurate. So again, facts can change, never proven, but they can change, but we have seen it multiple times, so we think that it is right. Okay, a scientific theory is a hypothesis that has been repeatedly confirmed by diverse independent researchers. So this means a bunch of other people. Okay, other people have conducted this test and it has happened over time, and all of these facts lead up to the theory. Okay, so once we have a lot of these facts to represent the observation and explain it, once other people complete the research, it then becomes a scientific theory. Okay, scientific theory is whenever we actually really should believe things. Because here they, like it says, that they have such a high level of certainty that we base our everyday actions on them. Gravity. Okay, gravity is a scientific theory. It is not fully proven. We have lots of facts that measure it, but we cannot actually prove it. But again, we base our everyday on it because we know that if we walk outside our house, we're not going to float away. We base our life on that theory. Okay, and that's just saying what that is, basically. Okay, so here's examples. So there I showed you everything that the steps to it, and here it's going to put it all together for you. Okay, so your first step is to make an observation, and this observation is that tomato plants seem to grow best in places that receive full sun all day. Okay, we've noticed that, so we've said it. So now we're going to make an educated guess, which is our hypothesis. If a tomato plant receives more hours of full sunlight, it will grow taller than those plants that receive less full sun exposure. So if, and then this is the cause, so remember independent, receives more hours of full sunlight, then, so basically a then can go there. Okay, then it will grow taller than those plants that receive less. So we're going to measure growing taller. Okay, so that would be our dependent. The prediction would be that tomato plants that receive the most full sun will grow taller than plants receiving less sun. Okay, again, hypothesis and prediction go hand in hand with each other. Then next we need to decide the parts of our experiment. Okay, our control group is going to be the one with no sunlight because remember, control group means normal. Okay, or no change. That's your control group. Okay, our experimental groups are the ones we are changing. Okay, so group 1 gets 4 hours, group 2 gets 6, group 3 gets 8, and group 4 is our control group. Okay, and that one is the one with 0. All right, these 3 are our experimental. Okay, because they are receiving special treatment. Okay, our controlled variables, again, the same thing as constants. Those are going to be the same amount of water, the same species of plants, same stage of growth, so that means they're same age basically, the same fertilizer, soil, temperature, all of these things need to be kept the same besides the sun exposure. That is the only thing that we can change. Okay, our independent variable would be our sunlight because that's what we're changing. And our dependent variable would be our growth because that is what we're measuring. Okay, here are our results. We have seen that group 1, it's grown a little, group 2 a little bit more, and group 3 it's very, very tall, while group 4 with 0 hours of sun hasn't grown at all. Okay, and it's all been after 6 weeks, so it's been the same amount of time as well. All right, and then to analyze our results, we put it into a graph. Okay, graphs are the best way to be able to actually see all of the information in one spot. Okay, this graph right here, that's called the key. Okay, and all the different colors represent which plant we're talking about. Okay, our time is down here. Okay, and then what we measured is over here. Here. So that's going to be your dependent. And then down here is always going to be your independent. Okay, so there's that. And then you just read the graph Okay, we can see group 3, the yellow, went the highest. Okay, so we'll say that if you're group 3, which means you had the most sun exposure, you are going to grow the tallest. Okay, then we're able to draw a conclusion based off of analyzing our data that plants with the most sunlight exposure grew taller than those plants without as much sun. We are able to accept our hypothesis. Okay, again, we're not saying that yes, we're correct. We're just saying that our hypothesis can be accepted based off the data we were given. Okay, and there is that. Okay, so that was an example of how we can go through the science experiment. All right, that's just with anything. All right, as long as you have multiple different things you can test, so your independent can change, then that's what you're testing for. Okay, you're testing for your independent variable. And then your dependent is just what you're measuring to see if your independent causes a change or if it doesn't cause a change. Okay, to check on these learnings, make sure you are able to do these things. If you're not, then again, you will become lost at some point, and we don't want that to happen because then it won't be good. All right. Yes. Other than that, if you can't figure some of this out and you've tried, please, please, please ask me questions. Okay. I know it's a weird setup with this virtual, but ask me questions. All right. That's the best thing I can do for you. It's what I'm here for. So please, please, please do it. Other than that, you do have a a check for understanding that is going to be graded. Most of it is multiple choice, but some of it isn't. Make sure you use your notes or you're remembering to look back to help you answer these questions, because I do really want to see where you are at, and I want us to grow together, all right? Again, if you have any questions, please contact me.